Hello, everyone. Today, I am here to tell you something very exciting for me. There is a new book that has come, which will tremendously help you. Look at this, guys. I am releasing for you an exciting new book. Question bank on post-colonial literatures. This question bank on post-colonial literatures is written by the team Valat. Dekho, we have the names here. Ashwati Babu and Parvati Das. And here in this book, you have lots of amazing questions. Look at this. Many tests. 4 options. And you can also look at the answers at the end. Indian literature and all post-colonial literatures. Did you like that? Test 4, test 5, test 6. Sorry. 7, 8, 9, they go 204 pages. There is a section on Indian, on African, on Caribbean, on Canadian, on Australian. You will cover all the important areas, authors, works, with this book. Latin American, New Zealand, post-colonial theory also. 27 tests, 28, so many tests. And you have explanations for answers. Very good original explanations. Not copied from anywhere, not ChatGPT, written by scholars. Oh, did you like that, guys? So this is our question bank on post-colonial literatures. You can get it from botheatreepublications.org. Now we will go into our usual Valat at 10, Unit 4, short stories and non-fiction. Are you ready for this, guys? Today, I'm going to introduce to you the authors, works, periods. And after that, from tomorrow, there will be quizzes. The book that I released is Question Bank on Post-Colonial Literatures. By the way, we have a book on short fiction also. The book on short fiction, I will tell you after our session on short fiction. Okay, so what are short stories? A story is a way to say something that can't be said in any other way. We have put a quote here, and it takes every word in the story to say what the meaning is. Guys, that is what a short story is. Can you see the screen? Yeah, just helping you to see. Okay, now you must be ready to talk about the many developments in short stories. A short story is a young art, the child of this century. The short story is comparatively new. What are the origins of short stories? Dekho, short stories come from myth. There are short stories based on myth, isn't it? Yes. Biblical verses, medieval sermons, romances, fables, folk tales. Don't worry, this is just an introduction. I will explain all this, the important authors' works, These are very, very important. These sections on short stories. Dekho, early short story cycles. Early means starting from Boccaccio's Decameron. We have Chaucer. And the most famous short story cycle in the world must be Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. And there are many short story cycles across the world in the 18th, 19th centuries, such as, I've given one example, the Russian Lermontov's A Sportsman's Sketches. Remember, guys, Boccaccio's Decameron was a reflection of the society of that time. 7 young women and 7 young women and 3 young men are escaping from Florence, and a very realistic representation of Florence and Italy of that time you get from Decameron. In Chaucer also, a realistic representation of his time. Arthur Conan Doyle wrote Sherlock Holmes. He changed the genre of short story. Not only that, he also gave us a glimpse of England of that time, London. Same with the Russian realistic writer Lermontov. He also talked about the corruption in the society, the pettiness of the society. Please remember these names. More names are coming up. Wait. Early practitioners and theorists include Washington Irving, the father of American short story. You all know Edgar Allan Poe is a very important figure in short story as well. He wrote tales of the grotesque and the arabesque. His short stories have an Orientalist perspective. De Maupassant is one of the very famous short story writers of France. So is Nikolai Gogol, Anton Chekhov in Russia. All these people showed the problems of the human society, their petty thoughts, relationships, materialism, middle class. All these are themes in these writers. And also people's engagement with one another, with beliefs, with death, with supernatural. Now, can you name a few modern short story cycles? I will tell you. James Joyce's Dubliners is a collection of how many short stories, guys? James Joyce's Dubliners is a collection of 15 short stories. There are also other writers like Hemingway. Hemingway wrote in our time a very famous short story collection. Also, he wrote Nick Adams stories. In Hemingway's short stories, what did he do? He again analyzed the 1920s America. Guys, is this video helping you? In Our Time is my Hemingway. And which is the short story collection by Faulkner? It is Go Down Mosses. There is one character in Faulkner's Go Down Mosses who is connecting all these tales. Sometimes short stories are written about the people living in one place, like R.K. Narayan's Malgudi Days or V.S. Napal's In Miguel Street. People living in one locality, in one place. That is what sometimes writers would write as a short story cycle. Is that clear, everybody? Now, some of the major short story writers let us talk about. Edgar Allan Poe wrote Gothic short stories. The Black Cat, M.S. Found in a Bottle, The Pit and the Pendulum. The Black Cat and all these novels are actually surrealistic, supernatural stories. And The Pit and the Pendulum, etc. are showing human mind. One man is feeling that a pendulum is coming towards him and it is going to kill him. This pendulum is ultimately death. It is like the pendulum is coming. Every one of us will be in the way of that pendulum, isn't it? There are lots of murderers. There is a lot of psychology. Psychopaths are there in Edgar Allan Poe's stories. A lot of people who kill each other. Raven is a very famous poem by Edgar Allan Poe. Raven, To Helen, To Science, these are poems. But I'm talking about the short stories of Edgar Allan Poe here. The Fall of the House of Usher. That is also a very psychologically intricate story. Whether these stories are really happening or whether these are our imagination, that is not very clear. In Nathaniel Hawthorne's short stories also, this is the same thing. For example, in the story, Young Goodman Brown, it is not very clear whether this Goodman Brown is imagining that his wife is a witch or whether she is really a witch. That is not very clear. Okay, Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote Young Goodman Brown. And the birthmark. A woman has a birthmark on her cheek. Her husband is trying to remove it, and in the process, she dies. The Minister's Black Veil, another story by Nathaniel Hawthorne. All these authors and their short stories are discussed in detail in our American Literature Encyclopedia. Yes, Vibrant Colors of Life is telling us about Christmas Carol. Christmas Carol is a short story by or a novella by Charles Dickens. Very good. And Charles Dickens wrote many other short stories. So did Herman Melville. There is a very famous American short story writer, O. Henry. O. Henry's Cop and the Anthem is prescribed in schools itself. O. Henry and Oscar Wilde, both are writers who wrote similar short stories. Oscar Wilde also. O. Henry and Oscar Wilde. The Happy Prince of Oscar Wilde is also prescribed in schools. A very famous short story it is. Saki or H.H. Munro, The Open Window of Saki or H.H. Munro, where a girl is just cooking up a story. She is cooking up a story of her uncle and her cousins having died, but actually she is lying. It is not a true story. Thomas Hardy also wrote many short stories. You know that Thomas Hardy is an amazing novelist, but Thomas Hardy also wrote the short stories that are very brilliant. Yes, Vibrant Colors of Life is reminding us of Last Leaf. Last Leaf is a story of a girl who is dying, but there is a story that one of the painters, her neighbors, tells her, and she believes it, and she does not die, she lives. So short stories are like snapshots. They are very good ways to see human relationships. You must all know these 20th century short story writers. They are all very famous. Whenever you remember titles, please tell us in the chat box. Virginia Woolf, in her Hogarth Press, published some short story collections. Virginia Woolf wrote a short story collection such as Kew Gardens. Rudyard Kipling wrote a lot of short stories for children about India. Even Jungle Book is like a collection of short stories. Rudyard Kipling's short story like Wireless, they have been asked in net. Rudyard Kipling's short stories are also given there in our encyclopedia. You must all know Somerset Maugham. He is also usually prescribed in schools and colleges. Somerset Maugham's The Bum is what I have studied. The Bum. So when I finish this video, it will be great if you go online, take your book and paper and pen, go online in Google, search for very famous short stories of these writers, make a list. This is homework for you. Make a list, and then one by one, you should read them. Short stories are very easy to read, very good to read. There are brilliant short story writers. Not only these writers, but more are there. For example, Shirley Jackson. Her Lottery. You won't believe this, guys. In a small town, everybody is happily coming to take part in a lottery. They are taking lots. You will think there will be some prize. They are so eager to take part in it. But only at the end, we find out that actually this lottery was to decide which one of these people should be stoned to death. For no reason, regularly they stone one of them to death. So this short story, The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, actually shows how stupid and mindless human societies are. We will mindlessly do things. Many times, short stories will show the stupidity of human life and human society, but short stories can also show you the greatness of human life. For example, Hemingway's short stories. The most famous short story of Hemingway is like a novella. It is The Old Man and the Sea. William Faulkner also wrote short stories. A Rose for Emily. There are many short stories in America of this time that show American culture very deeply. One of the most important genres in literature is short story. There are so many hundreds and thousands of writers. George Orwell also wrote short stories. Some are very autobiographical, such as Shooting an Elephant. Again, it is prescribed in schools and colleges. George Orwell was born in Bihar and he worked in the Royal Police in Burma. There one day, he was asked to shoot an elephant. He was asked to shoot an elephant. He did not like it. And he wrote about it in Shooting an Elephant. Can you name 3 American short story writers? I have given you 4 here. Kate Chopin, who wrote The Awakening. Edna Pontellier is having a very ordinary middle-class life, and she decides to do whatever she likes, whatever she wants. She falls in love with a man, but he rejects her, but she doesn't mind. She lives her life the way she wants and quietly commits suicide. Did you like all this, guys? Yes, Vibrant Colors of Life is a very expert listener on short stories. He is reminding us of Man with a Scar. The narrator is every day seeing this man with a scar, and he is wondering what war or what tremendous experience or trauma might have given him this scar. But at the end, we know that it was nothing. It was just an open soda bottle. Ha! Then there are other short stories famous like O. Henry's Gift of the Magi. Eudora Welty. She is also prescribed in universities. Mary Flannery O'Connor. Very famous is Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Everybody tell in the chat box, what is the famous short story of Charlotte Perkins Gilman, Bolo? Which is the famous short story of Charlotte Perkins Gilman? Charlotte Perkins Gilman's short story is called The Yellow Wallpaper. It is a very major short story of, feminism. That is right, Ganesh. Roald Dahl has also written many short stories. Ruskin Bond also. And many of these are good for children as well. Very good. Can you name 5 Canadian short story writers? Remember, guys, short story is a very major genre in Canadian literature. Alice Munro, the short story writer, won Nobel Prize. Margaret Atwood also wrote short stories. There are many short story collections of Margaret Atwood. Who wrote Who Do You Think You Are? Who Do You Think You Are? That is Who Do You Think You Are is a short story collection by Alice Munro. Kuhu, Yellow Wallpaper is like a novella, big short story. Lucy Maud Montgomery also wrote short stories. Margaret Lawrence, Rohinton Mystery, Audrey Thomas, Lee Maracle. So many short story writers are there in Canada. Can you name 10 19th century short story writers? Edgar Allan Poe we already talked about. Washington Irving, Herman Melville, Henry James. Which is the famous Gothic short story of Henry James? It is The Turn of the Screw. The Gothic short story of Henry James is The Turn of the Screw. Ivan Turgenev. He's a Russian short story writer. Of course, Arthur Conan Doyle. On which real life doctor did Arthur Conan Doyle base Sherlock Holmes on? It is Joseph Bell. Remember, guys, Arthur Conan Doyle has only written 5 novels. All the others are short stories. And there are so many other authors who continue to write Sherlock Holmes short stories. As I told you, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Charles Dickens, Anton Chekhov, and also Oscar Wilde, 19th century short story writers. Did you like that? There are some European short story writers I want to remind you of. Franz Kafka, The Hunger Artist is a very famous short story collection. Short story by Kafka. Albert Camus, Leo Tolstoy, Karl Stromer. Shame. You know, Leo Tolstoy's short stories have been discussed by the Russian formalists. Nikolai Gogol wrote The Overcoat. Anton Chekhov, Ward number 6, isn't it? The Lady with the Dog. Today itself, every day from today onwards, please read a major short story. It will be a tremendous knowledge for you. You know, guys, when you are in a group, when you are with friends, etc., you can also try telling these short stories to everybody and you will become a hero because you are telling good stories. Will you do that? Hey, this is our book that will help you immensely. It is a book called Short Fiction, edited by Roy Matthew and Kalyani Valath. And this book has a lot of information on short stories and a lot of questions are there. Each question is a summary of a short story. I'm sure many of you want to look at it. Shall I tell you what is inside short fiction? Wait a minute. I am ready to show you the inside pages. Do you want to see? Okay, I am here going to show you the book called Short Fiction. Ta-da-dang! Ta-da-dang! Dekho, there are sections on Indian writers and their short stories. British writers, can you see? British writers and their short stories. American writers and their short stories. Only 150 rupees or something, very cheap book, very less price book, but it has tremendous information. You should definitely get a copy of this book because it has a lot of information, easy information. Post-colonial writers, European writers, and also short story writers from other countries. If you want only you buy, I'm just telling you the information. There is no pressure or anything, okay? First, I have given questions here. These questions are all like summaries. You want to see? Dekho. These questions are all like summaries. In the short story, we ate the children last. Researchers discover a radical cure for digestive tract illnesses by transplanting pig organs into the body. And like this, you have to identify the short story. Don't worry. Everything is given behind the book in the answer section. The Library of Babel, short story by Jorge Luis Borges. Like that, so many important short stories are given here in the form of brief summaries. You will be able to understand and remember hundreds of short stories with this book. Simply, easily. Hills like white elephants. They go, Hills like white elephants. There's a short story about a pregnant woman and her sexual partner. And this man is encouraging her to get an abortion. Their conversation while they are traveling. near a railway station. That is the story. Who is the author? It is Ernest Hemingway. देखो कितने सारे short stories hai, so many, so many. You know, it took us years to make all this information. Not even months, years. This book is the most amazing book you will find to study about short stories. And all the answers are here. And these are from different areas, all topic wise. Or dekho, aise bhi hai, with pictures, some pages where you can look at all these pages, the author's names, the titles, and you can read. This is also a self-help book. You can also write your own page here. We have given space for you to write. Dekho, and now British writers, like that, so many. There are so many titles, authors and titles you may not even have heard. Beryl Bainbridge, they can ask in net. Very famous. Daphne du Maurier. Dekho, Angus Wilson. They're all very famous short story writers. And their names, everything is given here. And also, if you want to, can you name 3 short stories by Joseph Conrad? You don't know, but this book is a quick help. देखो short story collections का नाम भी है, short stories का नाम भी है. I am just showing you, I am not pressurizing you. If you don't want, don't study, don't buy. No problem. You can study on your own. But I'm only telling you, this is very easy for you. All right? Okay. I hope you liked this book. It is the book called Short Fiction from Bodhi Tree. Okay, now guys, let us go on to talk about what is it? Non-fiction and prose. Are you ready? This book only, most of Bodhi Tree books cost only 150 rupees or something. Even to eat one meal, you will have to spend 150 rupees. Even for the smallest thing these days, you need 150 rupees. Don't you have a small amount of money for lifetime learning about short stories? It is a joke if you think you cannot buy it. It is so cheap. Now, non-fiction ke baare mein dekhe, earliest non-fiction writers. Instead of spending 100 or 200 or even 1,000 rupees, how many years you are wasting? Because you won't pass otherwise now if you don't have good material. So don't think 2 times about these small books. They are very, very good. Instead of buying low quality books, buy these books and study on your own. You will easily pass because you saw the quality of the book for yourself. Now, earliest non-fiction writers. Remember, guys, non-fiction is always intertwined with philosophy, religion, and other things. Criticism. So Plato, Aristotle, Niccolo Machiavelli, they all wrote non-fiction, isn't it? Plato wrote Republic, Aristotle wrote Poetics, Nicomachean Ethics, Politics, and Machiavelli wrote, what did Machiavelli write? The Prince. Dekho, non-fiction writers of the Renaissance. Don't you remember Francis Bacon, essayist? He also wrote a lot of philosophical works, not only essays, but Nova Morganum, The New Atlantis, and also Thomas Hobbes, who wrote Leviathan. Thomas Hobbes, who wrote Leviathan, that is also a very major non-fiction writer. Thomas Hobbes was a philosopher. He brought empiricism into England. Empiricism means the idea that experience is the greatest knowledge. Guys, can you name a non-fiction work published in 1621? Can you name a non-fiction work published in 1621? It is The Anatomy of Melancholy by Robert Burton. Or dekho, there are so many subgenres of non-fiction. Biography is a subgenre. Memoir is a subgenre. Travel writing, autobiography, essay. These are all subgenres of non-fiction. Can you name any famous biography? Of course, The Life of Samuel Johnson, published in 1791. Can you name a famous travelogue? Travelogue. Utopia is written in the form of a travelogue. V.S. Naipaul wrote a trilogy of travelogues. Isn't it? Can you name a famous autobiography? Autobiography or memoir? It is The Story of My Experiments with Truth by Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, isn't it? Many important writers have written autobiographies. What are the autobiographical works of R.K. Narayan? My Days, My Dateless Diary. Which are the autobiographical works of Graham Greene? Ways of Escape, A Sort of Life. These are asked in net always. Essay. Now listen everybody, the genre of essay is associated with journalism. Journalistic essay. And also, as you know, essay began in the 18th century. It underwent a huge transformation in the 19th century. And in the 20th century, again, it changed completely. We will talk about major essays. Don't leave the session. I have many interesting things coming up. Please don't leave the session. Stay here. And also, please like the video. There are also diaries and journals. Journals and diaries, very important. And also philosophy. Now let us move on and talk about famous diarists. The most famous diarist in English in Britain is Samuel Pepys. That is very good, Kuhu. Speak Memory by Vladimir Nabokov is a very famous memoir. Samuel Pepys and John Evelyn are diarists of the 17th century. There is Anne Frank's diary, the diary of a young girl written during the Second World War. And there is Frank Kafka who wrote diaries. Frank Kafka's diaries are also very, very important. Frank Kafka's diaries. And then we have Virginia Woolf. Did you know, guys? Virginia Woolf also wrote diaries. Very good. You know, probably she wrote autobiographical essays and diaries. Moments of Being. It was published posthumously. Are you taking down all this information, everybody? Very good. The most popular subgenre of non-fiction in the 18th century is the essay. You know that there were many periodicals in the 18th century, starting from the Daily Current. There was Tatler, Spectator, Daniel Defoe's Review, Swift's Examiner, then Dr. Johnson's Rambler, Gentleman's Magazine. All these had essays. Also, in the 19th century, as you know, the Edinburgh Magazine, the Quarterly Review, the Blackwoods Magazine, Westminster Review, Cornhill Magazine, so many magazines were there in Britain alone. All these are very, very important periodicals, and they were the medium for the essays of the time. Can you name famous essays of the 18th century, anybody? Can you name famous essays of the 18th century? That is an easy question. Everybody knows. John Locke, Jonathan Swift, Samuel Johnson, Joseph Addison, Richard Steele, Mary Wollstonecraft. Many of these periodicals had some imaginary club associated with them. For example, the Tatler had the Trumpet Club. Spectator had Spectator Club, isn't it? Mary Wollstonecraft wrote about women in vindication of the rights of man, vindication of the rights of women, rights of men, then vindication of the rights of women, etc. Didn't you understand? Don't you remember? Is it? It is very interesting. Okay. So then we have 19th century essays. Those who joined late, we are doing short stories and non-fiction today. We did a lot of short stories. If you missed it, watch it again from the beginning. Also, our Vallat has a short story book, short fiction it is called. It is a very good workbook with easy summaries of short stories in the form of questions and answers, and also a lot of pictures and lists of short stories, etc. And also, guys, you can just log on to valat.in to know about our books, to know about our courses and everything. You don't have to buy them, but even looking at them will give you a lot of knowledge. Right. Now, 19th century essayists are there. Charles Lamb, William Hazlitt, Leigh Hunt, Thomas De Quincey, Ralph Waldo Emerson. That reminds me, if anybody is doing RPSC exam preparation here, please listen to my 10 p.m. live every day, because we have an RPSC batch. I am following their syllabus also here, net syllabus and set syllabus also. If you follow 10 p.m. live, you will really get a lot of information and you will be able to pass if you study based on this. Okay. So if you want RPSC coaching, you can check out valat.in. Otherwise, simply follow 10 p.m. live every day. Can you name some modern essays, everybody? Can you type some modern essays? Of course, Virginia Woolf, George Orwell, T.S. Eliot. Hannah, tell me the names of their essays. Any essay by Virginia Woolf? Virginia Woolf wrote essays like Professions for Women, Modern Fiction, Modern Essay, How It Strikes a Contemporary. Then any essay by George Orwell, Inside the Whale. Salman Rushdie also wrote many essays in Imaginary Homelands, isn't it? Then we are talking about 20th century essays. T.S. Eliot wrote essays, What is a Classic? E.M. Foster, A.G. Gardner. Then Robert Lind, Bertrand Russell. Some of them are philosophers, some of them are light social essayists, some of them are critics and theorists. You should look up all these writers. There are very important essays written by them. Susan Sontag wrote Notes on Camp. Tell me the essays of T.S. Eliot, guys. T.S. Eliot wrote Tradition and the Individual Talent. Very good. Kirtana is saying. Kuhu is saying he wrote the book Sacred Wood. Virginia Woolf wrote Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Brown and Room of One's Own. Very good. I'm proud of you all. You are remembering everything. Some philosophers are there like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Edmund Burke. Some of them wrote speeches. Edmund Burke's speech at the impeachment of Warren Hastings that was asked in net. Immanuel Kant, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and our Swami Vivekananda. His speeches are famous. Amartya Sen. Then Abdul Kalam, they might ask about these writers. Modern philosophers also, their essays. Albert Camus, Myth of Sisyphus. Jean-Paul Sartre, Friedrich Nietzsche, Michel Foucault, they're all very important philosophers. And some important American non-fiction writers, dekho, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Bell Hooks. Everybody knows Bell Hooks' famous essay, Ain't I a Woman? Ain't I a Woman was originally a speech by Sojourner Truth. When we talk about American fiction, non-fiction writers, you should not forget the African-American slave writers. The African-American slave writers, very important. Guys, am I helping you? Is this video helping you? If you like the video, please let me know with a lot of hearts. Please like the video. Okay. Most important, Indian non-fiction writers, dekho, everybody must, Thoreau's Civil Disobedience. Emerson's Self-Reliance. Very good. Emerson wrote Oversoul, American scholar. Very, very good. Now, Indian non-fiction writers, dekho, S. Radhakrishnan, Nissim Ezekiel, A.K. Ramanujan. Have you heard of A.K. Ramanujan? Is there an Indian way of thinking? 300 Ramayanas. These are by A.K. Ramanujan. Also V.S. Naipaul. wrote many non-fiction works. The Loss of El Dorado. He wrote about Islam. He wrote about India. It's very good. Also, Amitav Ghosh, he's now writing about climate change, the great derangement. Arundhati Roy has written a lot of non-fiction. So has Shashi Tharoor. They are very important non-fiction writers. They have written a lot about, politics, culture, society, against capitalism, against Americanization. Shashi Tharoor is an area of darkness, very famous. They have also won awards for it, isn't it, guys? Yes. And then I have introduced one more slide here. Most important Indian journalistic writers. They might ask you about journalists. In net, they might ask you about journalists. Many of them are associated with NDTV. Journalists associated with NDTV or with India Today or with Hindustan Times, Deccan Chronicle, Outlook, The Telegraph, so many major papers, Times of India, isn't it? The Hindu. So Barkhadat is very famous. She's a celebrity. Rajdeep Sardesai and Sagarika Ghosh. Husband and wife, some of them are. Pranoy Roy and Radhika Roy. Gauri Lankesh. She is a very important journalist. Vikram Chandra, P. Sainath. Swapan Das Gupta. There are so many journalists. I have no way to finish talking about them. If we do research, we will find a lot of important journalists in India. They are doing amazing work. Ravish Kumar, very good. He recently won the award also. Ravish Kumar. So I'm talking about writers and guys, they might ask you about journalists. So remember that also. So that brings us to the end of this session. I hope you liked all this discussion. There will be questions from the authors that we mentioned here. I hope you will read extra. You will make your own notes. And when I come with questions, you should be able to answer them easily, right? You can do it. You are all amazing because you are already doing a lot of wonderful work. Thoda sa more if you do, it will be awesome. I know that when the exam result comes, many of you would have passed. If not this time, next time, because you are doing a lot of good work. Let us continue to do this. Please like the video, share the video with your friends, and we will meet again tomorrow with questions. Bye-bye. I love you all. Good night.